people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. What is a closer look at the upcoming WBA Super Bantamweight title fight between Nazarena Romero, the champion, and Mayeli Flores, the challenger, set to go down on the undercard of Lubin versus Holmes Jr. next month on ProBox. And what to me is arguably the best fight on the entire bill, better even than the main event. Nazarena Romero, the defending champion, sports a professional record of 14 wins with no losses, 2 draws, 8 knockouts. 30 years old. To Mayeli Flores, who sports a professional record of 12 wins with 1 loss, 1 draw, 4 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 14 professional bouts. 32 years old. Tail of the tape. The edge in height and the edge in length would have to go to Nazarena Romero, as Mayeli is the shorter, stockier, and stumpier fighter, but that actually lends itself to her base style. Mayeli is a pressure fighter, and so is Nazarena Romero. Expect fireworks. Mayeli Flores was last in action in November of last year. She actually fought 2 times last year, once in October, again in November. Now she's fighting next month for the WBA title. This will be the second time that Mayeli challenges for an alphabet title. The first time was downstairs at bantamweight when she challenged Mexico's own Yuli Hang Luna and was outpointed, though not before giving Yuli Hang all she could handle. And now she means to do the same north of Bantam at Super Bantam against Nazarena Romero, who last saw action in August of last year. She actually fought 2 times last year, once in May, then again in August. She'll be returning to action next month. Will she be able to handle the pressure from Mayeli Flores when so often she's the one applying it? So often she's the aggressor, she's the pressure fighter. I've only seen Nazarena in there with another pressure fighter like herself on one occasion, and that was when she challenged Erica Cruz, then champion, for the WBA title in a fight that was scored a draw. There are some similarities between Erica Cruz and Mayeli Flores. Mayeli, like Erica, is a short, stocky, stumpy fighter, a bulldog. It's what I mean when I say that her small, portly stature is not a hindrance. It actually lends itself to her base style, barreling forward, coming in at a slight crouch, trying for hooks, overhands. She's strong. Then again, so is Nazarena Romero, the defending champion, who knows a bit about applying pressure herself. And I want to say that punch for punch, in terms of single punching power, I think that Nazarena Romero packs a bigger punch than Mayeli Flores because she really throws her entire body into the shot, hence her having more knockouts, more recorded knockouts than Mayeli Flores. She's more athletic than Mayeli, not as compact. So she really throws herself into those big punches, those looping shots, those hooks. Whereas Mayeli's variety of punches is a bit more limited based on her small stature. She really is limited to the overhand shots, the looping shots. Over the top. As she is coming in at a slight crouch, bending at the waist and knees, leaning off to one side in order to bring over those looping shots from the other, and that is her primary weapon when closing the distance. It's what makes her similar to Erica Cruz. Erica Cruz is the same way. Erica Cruz that Nazarena Romero fought to a draw. Erica Cruz that had Nazarena flustered and somewhat gun-shy, breaking character. Nazarena Romero is so used to being the one coming forward that when she got a taste of her own medicine, she was like a deer in the headlights. Saving grace, the silver lining for Nazarena. An important detail that I was not aware of until recently is that she has since enlisted the aid of veteran trainer Manny Robles. I didn't know that. This is a recent development. When she fought Erica Cruz a couple of fights ago, she didn't have Manny in her corner to formulate a solid game plan for her, an actual plan of action, what I think could be a very big difference the night of. So you've got two pressure fighters here, two fighters that like to barrel forward and throw punches in bunches. Perhaps what will determine the outcome of the fight isn't who applies pressure the best, but who breaks character, who decides to mix in a little bit of boxing with all that brawling, a little bit of movement.
Un saludo muy grande para toda la gente que nos está viendo, a la gente que produce Pro Box, que el día de mayo vamos a estar dando guerra.
Nice. Now, how long have you guys been working together?
We just started. We just came from Argentina. This is actually our first day working together. So
Wow. That is very, very cool.
Days ago, and now we're in Vegas.
Well, you're in good hands with Manny, very well-respected trainer.
So that's a bit of a game changer, that Nazarena now has Manny Robles in her corner to help her negotiate space against the oncoming pressure of Mayeli Flores, to where maybe she won't be flustered by a pressure fighter this time. Box and punch. Box and brawl. You don't have to engage for the entirety of the fight, and you don't have to backpedal for the entirety of the fight. Finding a happy medium is the key to beating a pressure fighter. The boxing and the punching, putting both together. I think Manny Robles can help Nazarena Romero do that. So it's not a lock, it's not a guarantee or a foregone conclusion that Nazarena wins, but I'm going to go with Nazarena on points. I'm going to go with Nazarena to keep the WBA title next month in Florida on the undercard of Erickson Lubin's next fight on Pro Box. And super middleweight news, David Benavidez receives WBA World Belt, still in line as mandatory challenger. The World Belt, just another way of saying the WBA regular title, because we all know who has the full one. We all know who has the super. That's Dimitri. Dimitri Bivol remains burdened with his share of mandatory challengers in waiting. That list still includes David Benavidez, despite the reigning lineal and unified light heavyweight champion recently vacating his WBC title. Benavidez is in the unique situation where he owns a full title from one sanctioning body and a secondary version of another. The unbeaten two-division champion was recently presented with the WBA World Light Heavyweight title, which came shortly after he was upgraded from interim to full WBC champion. Because he's not a champion. I want to thank the WBA for presenting me with my first WBA belt, Benavidez said of the honor. It's been a belt that I've been wanting to win for a long time, and I'm very grateful and happy to be a WBA champion. Strange that the WBA title is only now coming to him. When he fought David Morrell a ways back, he fought him weeks ago, what feels like months ago. Dimitri Bivol, 23-1 with 12 knockouts, still holds the WBA super version of the belt along with the ring, IBF, and WBO titles. He was forced to vacate the WBC title for refusal to honor an ordered title consolidation versus Benavidez, as he remains tied to a third fight with Artur Beterbiev expected to take place later this year.
I even saw people coming out saying, Dimitri Bivol was offered $8 million. So what? With all due respect, he's made more than that for his fights with Artur Beterbiev. But also, it doesn't matter whether we were offered 20 million. Contractually, we couldn't do it.
At some point, the winner will be ordered to make an overdue IBF-mandated defense against Germany's own Michael Eiffert, 13-1 with 5 knockouts. Benavidez remains very much in the mix as well. WBA representatives confirmed to Boxing Scene that a mandatory title defense will be ordered on the other side of the Bivol versus Beterbiev rubber match. Benavidez became a dual mandatory to the light heavyweight throne after a February 1st UD win over David Morrell at T-Mobile Arena in Vegas in Nevada. The 28-year-old of Phoenix, Arizona, defended his interim WBC light heavyweight title and claimed Morrell's WBA world title with the victory. The win came 3 weeks before Bivol defeated Beterbiev via a majority decision to claim the undisputed light heavyweight championship in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Beterbiev won in the same fashion 4 months prior, also in Riyadh, to fully unify the division. Bivol was given the chance to avenge his lone career defeat, though initially on the condition that the winner face Eiffert, since the IBF mandatory was next in the rotation. WBC President Mauricio Suleiman disagreed with that logic and proceeded with his mandatory title consolidation bout per a ruling from last year's annual WBC convention. In any other division, the World Boxing Council abides by a rotation of mandatories with every other unified and/or undisputed champion, whereas this time, they decided to jump the gun, creating the situation you are now seeing. They were not next in the rotation, and David has not been in position longer than Michael Eiffert. Dimitri Bivol and his legal team attempted to protest the decision, but it fell on deaf ears, and he ultimately agreed to give up his WBC title. However long he gets to keep the rest of his belts will first depend on the outcome of his rubber match with Artur. From there, it will depend on the urgency of the sanctioning bodies to enforce their mandatories. In an ideal world, David Benavidez would be fighting Michael Eiffert on the undercard of Beterbiev versus Bivol to clear the way for a fight between them. For a lot of money. Knock the other guy out of position so he's not in the way of what is your crack at the apple. But the way things are, David doesn't want to fight in Saudi. Samson doesn't want him to fight there either. So this is still going to be a problem after the Beterbiev versus Bivol trilogy, that Michael Eiffert, for all accounts, is still in the queue and he's still in the way. Meanwhile, plans are being sorted for David Benavidez to make a title defense sometime this summer. It will be his first as full WBC champion after he previously twice held the title at Super Middle. Who he's gonna fight, we don't know. Rumor has it that it could be anyone from Callum Smith to Anthony Yard, should he win this weekend. I've got my reservations when it comes to those potential opponent options, names that are being thrown around, because for Anthony, who's boxing this Saturday, boxing over the summer months might be too quick a turnaround. It all depends on the Lyndon Arthur fight. And when it comes to Callum Smith, the fundamental problem with a Callum Smith fight is it was already proposed to Team Benavidez and they turned it down. That's not according to me, that's according to Samson Lukowicz. You've all seen the video, there's no need to keep playing it over and over again. So, whatever you offer Callum, it has to be good enough that it's on par with that. On par with what Turkey was willing to pay you guys for the fight. Because if it's not, I don't think Callum is gonna board a plane to fight you in America for peanuts on the dollar. He's used to making good money, very good money, all on his own. And the fact that this fight was already on the table for multi-millions. You better be offering multi-millions, and I'm not sure they are. David Benavidez versus Callum Smith in America is a good fight. Good fight for the hardcores, but not necessarily the casuals. The casual audience in America, all they know about Callum is that's a guy Canelo beat up 5 years ago. Now you want to charge us $80 to see you fight him? Sorry, and I actually think that's a good fight. I happen to think that's an excellent fight for David Benavidez and a credible scalp, but not good enough that you should be charging people $80 to see it. This whole thing about David becoming an email champion was made possible by Dimitri having won the rematch, and now his fans are acting like there's something wrong with the trilogy, like there's no precedent for one. Artur won the first one, Dimitri won the second. Naturally, you would want to do a third. Neither one of those two fights were lopsided. They were both competitive bouts, so naturally, you would do a tiebreaker. But David Benavidez's fans choose to be obtuse while he sells his wolf tickets. Let me tell you something. In spite of the theatrics from Team Benavidez and the World Boxing Council's involvement in forcing the mandatory ahead of schedule, this wasn't about getting Dimitri in the ring. It was about getting David a vacant title and using this trilogy as an opportunity to do so, because everyone knew a trilogy was looming, that if Dimitri wins the rematch, there's gonna be a third fight. I just wonder, say Dimitri wouldn't have won the rematch, say Artur would have beat him both times, would they have taken this same course of action? I don't think he wants Dimitri, but I think he would have wanted Artur even less. And say Artur would have won both fights, no need for a trilogy. Yeah, that situation with Michael Eiffert would have still been there, but clearly Team Benavidez and the World Boxing Council weren't worried about Michael Eiffert or him being next in the rotation. Would they have taken the same course of action if there were no trilogy? I don't think so. I think these are all theatrics. I think these are all wolf tickets that you know Dimitri's spoken for. You knew that ahead of time, so you're taking it as an opportunity to play pretend. Oh, well, we wanted to fight him, but he won't fight us. So now we're gonna fight this other guy. Who this other guy's supposed to be, I don't know. They're talking about bringing David back over the summer months. And it better be against somebody good, because there are quite a few pay-per-views going down over the summer months. You're talking about 2 of Turkey's in May. The one with Ryan and Rolly, then the one with Canelo that same weekend. Don't forget about Gervonta Davis's rematch with Lamont Roach. That one's gonna run you about as much money as the first 2 combined. But Gervonta versus Roach 2, the rematch, is a bit of a hot ticket given what happened in the first fight. Then you have the July show with Edgar Berlanga and Shakur Stevenson, all of that. Another one. To where, if you're doing a pay-per-view involving David Benavidez and someone else, it better be somebody good, because you are in fact competing with all these other pay-per-views. You're competing for the same eyes, you're competing for the same wallets, the same viewership, you're competing with them and what they're doing. Do you think that the boxing fans are going to buy every single pay-per-view that gets put out? They're not. That's what the numbers show. They're going to be selective, the ones who actually buy pay-per-views. Never mind the people that don't. Focus on the people that do and realize they're not going to buy all of them. They're not going to pay through the nose just to watch a little bit of boxing. They're going to be selective. And what reason are you giving them to select yours, to select your fight? Who are you going to fight over the summer months if you do fight? Don't forget, Jake Paul has a pay-per-view coming up too, with Julio Cesar Chavez. You have to give people a reason to spend money on your fight, otherwise they're not going to, and you have a lot, and I mean a lot, to compete with, to where if the best you can do is either Anthony Yarde or Callum Smith, that's not good enough. And that's if you're even able to get those guys in the ring. I think every one of those fights is a solid fight for David, but what I don't think is that they're box office. Anthony Yarde may be a name in the UK, but not in America. Same applies to Callum. And $80 to the consumer is $80, which is why David, to me, seems to be more of an online sensation than a box office draw. Online, his name moves the needle, but that doesn't translate into big pay-per-view buys. Not for him. Maybe for Ryan Garcia, maybe for Jake it shows up in their numbers, but not David's. Many a YouTube content creator and many a podcaster can bolster their metrics by talking about that situation between Canelo and David. That moves the needle online, but at the same time, that doesn't cost anybody anything. When you ask people to pay $80 to see David Benavidez fight, now that's when and where they show you how much they really care. How much they care or how much they don't. It's a little bigger than David, the situation that he's in, because he's campaigning as a light heavyweight now, and it just so happens that America doesn't have much of a stake in the light heavyweight division. I mean, most of the big names at that weight are international guys. 2 Russians and Dimitri and Artur, couple of Brits and Joshua Buatsi and Anthony Yarde, Callum Smith. Americans being as xenophobic as they are, and this division being an international one, none of it really helps David in his bid to become a pay-per-view star.